And in other news, a fiscal deadlock between the White House and GOP officials continues. With the partial government shutdown now in its 11th day and with less than a week to go before the Treasury Department runs out of money to pay the government's bills, President Obama has been urging congressional Republicans to end the gridlock that has overtaken Washington and crippled the country. Late yesterday, House Republican leaders met with President Obama regarding a plan they proposed, suggesting a short-term debt limit increase that would last for about 6 weeks. The White House has hinted that the new proposal is seriously being considered, particularly if it means an end to the government shutdown. This morning, about 20 House Republicans and Majority Leader Eric Cantor gathered to talk about the possibility of quickly reopening the government, but only if there is a commitment by Obama to take significant deficit reduction steps. However, the president has asked for a short-term debt limit increase with no conditions attached. And he continued to press his case today in a meeting with Senate Republicans. While there's no definitive deal at this point, lawmakers are saying that this 6-week proposal is the greatest sign of progress since the government shutdown went into effect. And locals in the nation's capital say progress can't come soon enough. Congress controls all of the district's appropriations, and that means the city has been caught up in this national political fight. Here to discuss the latest on the Hill and how it affects Washington, D.C., I'm joined by Senator Paul Strauss. He's the U.S. Shadow Senator for the District of Columbia. Thank you, Paul, for joining me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
It's a great opportunity.
Well, let's talk about the latest. It seems like there may be progress in this 6-week extension proposal on the debt ceiling. We know that Boehner and President Obama, the latest is that they've been talking intently on the phone, trying to come to a resolution. Are you optimistic at this point that we're nearing that?
You know, I'd like to be, but the information I'm getting is that they're still pretty far apart. I don't think it's unreasonable to expect that the government be open, that the government pay its bills before we begin to debate about the great issues of our day. This is an outrageous tactic by congressional Republicans to hold the entire government hostage, and in particular, it's hurting my constituents in the District of Columbia even worse, because although we've been able to keep the D.C. government open temporarily, we're about to run out of money, and the consequences for city residents are going to be much greater than those around the country.
Well, can you talk a little bit more about that? How is this fiscal deadlock really affecting your residents, D.C. residents in particular?
Well, all locally raised tax dollars have to be appropriated by Congress. That's wrong. It shouldn't be that way. We should be treated like every other state and locality. Our local money should be our local money. But the rules say that Congress controls our budget, and when they can't open up the federal government and pass an appropriations bill, the city budget gets tied up in that. Now, our mayor has decided not to close the government by declaring all D.C. government workers essential. We've run the city very well. We have a strong budget surplus, but we're dipping into those savings to keep the government open, and it wasn't designed to pay day-to-day operations. It was a rainy day fund, and certainly it's raining today, both metaphorically and in actuality, but we're going to run out of money. And unlike other situations where tourists can't go to parks or passports might not be issued, the impact is very severe. We have health clinics that are going to be forced to close because our Medicaid funds aren't accessible. Mentally ill people can't get their medication. Life-threatening illnesses are going to go untreated. We have public charter schools that are going to be forced to close. That's not happening in the 50 states. So what we really need the Congress to do while they work out this national disaster is free D.C.'s budget from this ridiculous deadlock and allow the city to stay open.
Sure. And as I'm sure you know, a couple of days ago, Mayor Vincent Gray, dropped in on a press conference being given by Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid to express that very concern. Let's take a look at that really quickly.
Sir, we are not a department of the government. We have our own money. We're simply trying to be able to spend our own money,
I'm on your side. Don't screw it up. I'm on your side.
So Senator Reid says, I'm on your side, don't screw it up. Well, first of all, what does that even mean, and was that response enough for you?
Well, I was right there, so it was certainly a memorable moment. I don't know what Senator Reid meant exactly by that. The truth is Senate Democrats have been on the district side in these fights with the federal government. But we're getting a little frustrated because it's a lot like the fire department coming to your house and starting to tell you a story about how many times they've put fires out or rescued people in times past, when we're saying, look, this house is about to burn down. You need to do something now. Senator Reid is a friend. He's a supporter of D.C. statehood, and he has the job of trying to keep the entire country on on track. We respect his position, and we're grateful for his help. But we really need the district to be treated differently because we are different. We're not an agency of the federal government, and we don't belong in the middle of this federal shutdown mess.
Well, let's take a look at some numbers. Washington, D.C. has tapped a $144 million contingency reserve fund to keep 32,000 district employees working during the shutdown. On October 15th, a $98 million payroll for these workers is due. What happens when this contingency runs out of money?
We really don't know. That is something that we didn't plan on. Nobody expected that Congress would be this irresponsible and allow this shutdown to continue. In the last government shutdown, the district was exempted from the consequences locally within 5 days. It's been many more days than that now. That contingency fund was not designed to fund day-to-day operations for long-term periods. And unlike the 50 other states, this is serious, serious consequences to people's health, to people's safety. Trash won't be picked up. Yeah, it'll be fun. No parking tickets for a few days, but that's going to get old fast as the garbage begins to pile up. In fact, right now, it's the district government that's picking up trash in national parks to avoid a public health calamity. I don't know what's going to happen when trash doesn't get picked up in the rest of the city, when health clinics are forced to close, when public charter schools are forced to close. The consequences are going to spiral out of control.
Indeed, and the House Republicans have passed a bill to allow D.C. to spend its locally raised tax dollars, but Reid has not yet brought this to a vote. Do you feel like there's a disconnect between the needs of your constituents and the national party?
There is a fundamental misunderstanding amongst many senators that this is not a federal appropriation. This is a local government that's trying to spend locally raised dollars. At the same time, let's not give the Republicans too much credit. They're being a little cute here. They've sent a bunch of bills across. They're trying to reopen the government piecemeal. We know we can't let that happen. If we begin on a national level to start passing piecemeal CRs, some of the government's never going to open. We're never going to have an EPA again fighting environmental polluters. We're never going to have people taking on fighting for consumers. So there's plenty of agencies that the Republicans would love to keep shut down. The entire government, when it opens up, has to reopen up. But at the same time, there's ample precedent for treating the District of Columbia differently. We are not an agency of the federal government. Our mayor is right. The people of D.C. deserve to have our budget free from this dysfunction.
And let's hope that D.C. residents do indeed get what they deserve. Thank you so much for joining me. Paul Strauss, a shadow senator representing the District of Columbia.
Thank you so much.